Welcome back to The Simpleton. Hey guys, this episode right here is really great. I highly recommend that you listen to the whole thing. Right now, I'm just providing you with the teaser. Obviously, we can't post the whole episode on YouTube because it'll get taken down for copyright by Spotify. I understand that we don't have all the time in the world to listen to the whole episode. It's a 3 hour long episode. This clip that we're about to listen to just really hits the nail on the head about why we love listening to Joe Rogan, what makes his podcast so popular, and why so many people tune in to listen every single week. If you don't have time to listen to the entire episode, I recommend that you start listening to it at around the 55-minute mark. That's when Adam Curry starts getting into the topic of mass formation psychosis, and I really think that the content and talking points after this point are really worth your time listening to.
It's not fun when I think about deep dives on, air quotes, evil. Because I don't know if it's real. I don't know how much of it's real. But I know that throughout history, there have been enormous entities, whether they're armies or governments or religions, that have wreaked havoc on the human race.
Of course. And you know how it always goes? The people in control of the money, they start creating more of it, or they start devaluing it in some other way. And most recently, the Roman Empire, of course, less and less silver, less and less gold, clipping coins. And that's what always puts us into trouble. And that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. What I was going to say is, and if you don't think that can happen right now, you're crazy. It's always happening. And we always have to fight against it. And so, when people think that, the idea of saying that freedom is important is a frivolous notion, you have to understand what you get when you don't have freedom. Then other people have control of you. Once people have control of you, they do bad things. If you look at the places that have the most control over people, and Australia is one of them because everyone's unarmed, because they took the guns away in the 90s when they had one mass shooting. They took everybody's guns away.
First of all, not everyone's unarmed. There are lots, but they didn't take them away. They gave them voluntarily. They went,
okay. That's fine. But they're unarmed, though. There's very few rifles. Very few rifles that exist for hunting.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly unarmed people. That's the difference. And what they're doing over there is crazy. They're imposing rules on these people. They're ignoring science when it comes to whether or not you've recovered from it naturally because you got COVID. Should you be exempt from taking a vaccine? No, it's everybody needs the shot. What are you doing? They're saying now 3 is the shot.
Oh, what's your number? What's your number? 4,
Israel's
5,
up to 4.
6. What's your number? When does it stop?
It gets to this point where you're going, okay, would that be possible in a place where everybody was armed? And I'm not saying people should rise up against government. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the psychology of people where they have ultimate power over you because they have all the weapons. Just from let's not even look at this scenario. Let's look at just the psychological state of people that have absolute control over you, and then they want to tell you what to do. There's some people that are bad parents. They're go to your room. Just shut up and go to your room. They want the kid to just shut up and go to the room because they don't want to deal with it anymore. Because they have the ultimate power over the kid. And then the kid feels like this is a terrible relationship. They don't want to listen to me. I'm crying. I didn't really mean to do it that way. And you can't even talk to them. Go to your room. Shut the fuck up. Go to your room. That's some parents, right? It's also some governments. There's some governments that when they have the same kind of ultimate power that a parent has over a child, they're shitty government. And they're mean. And they treat people as if they have to listen. And they treat people as if they're second-class citizens and they know better than you. Even though they're just human beings, they know better than you, and you're just going to have to do this. You're just going to have to get used to doing this because this is how we do things. Hey, no, fuck you. You're just a person. You shouldn't be telling all these other people who disagree how they have to and don't have to live their life. How can you do that? The only way. You have to have ultimate power. Ultimate power. You have to be the only one who's armed. You have to be the only one who gets to say. You have to be stuck in this weird situation where you can change laws and change rules because there's an emergency. Get away all sorts of protections that people have had in the past, and then you never get them back.
I love you.
I love you too.
That clip right there is a great example of why Joe has such a large audience. And it's also a great segue into the topic that I want to get into next. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. With the type of world and governments that we live in today, it's very hard to really see an apple-to-apple comparison of this absolute power corrupts absolutely. The saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely conveys the idea that as a person's power increases, their moral sense diminishes. And although today we no longer have a king or an emperor or a dictatorship as clear as it was back in the old days. The new entity that is being corrupted and their morals are diminishing, I would say, is the government. The clearest example of power corrupting would be the mainstream news today. Some quick examples that we can see is the cover-up with the Cuomo brothers on CNN, also the attempted cover-up and downplaying of the Hunter Biden emails. And we're living in it right now with all the lies that are being presented by the CDC, the WHO, and Anthony Fauci, and the mainstream news that doesn't want you to hear it. So we're about to go back in time, and I'm going to go into the story of Napoleon Bonaparte. Hope you enjoy. Was Napoleon Bonaparte a revolutionary or a tyrant? Napoleon often referred to himself as a son of the revolution, having developed a tremendous career in the French army during the French Revolution and once even saving the National Convention from defeat. He became a man of immense power. Napoleon was initially well liked. He was a confident, charismatic leader to whom his troops could relate to and look up to. Napoleon's early military career consisted of fighting for the revolution. His leadership and power ultimately did help ensure the abolition of the monarchy and establishment of France as a republic. The trouble with gaining power and respect is that it can often cause us to develop an insatiable appetite for even more power and respect. Such was the case of Napoleon Bonaparte. Rather than to help ensure the development of France as a free republic, Napoleon decided what France and all of Europe needed was a sole individual overseeing the country. So he crowned himself Emperor Napoleon I of France. This was a contradiction of epic proportions. This man who had fought the revolutionary movement during the liberation of France now restored the very monarchy-type government of the old regime that he helped defeat. Many laws and liberties had been granted to the French people during the revolutionary movement. Bonaparte took many of those away. Women had nearly been declared as equal members of society. They were now regarded as mere accessories to the lives of men. Napoleon had in fact let his egoism get the best of him. Having self-crowned himself as ruler, Napoleon claimed to be somewhat of a protector of the principles established by the French Revolution. To everyone else, this was quite hard to see. While he was successful in balancing the budget crisis, wars would soon follow. Napoleon's Grand Army was quite successful in its victories. Over the Austrian and Prussian armies, he expanded the Empire of France and gained tremendous amounts of land, calling the expansion the Rhine. Having failed to conquer England with a tactical maneuver, stopping and shutting down sea trade, and the failed invasion of the great country of Russia, Napoleon found himself falling in a downward spiral. Even before his defeat and exile to the island of Elba, European nations were developing peace agreements and ensuring nothing like what France had done would ever happen again. Whether or not Napoleon saved or suppressed the progress made from the French Revolution is debatable. If his ego and personal agenda had not overtaken him, he may very well have been one of France's greatest revolutionary leaders. In the end, Napoleon was regarded by most of all Europe as a dictator and tyrant. It is hard to say that he aided revolutionary progress when he himself abolished many of its principles and re-established a monarchy himself.